Boom, we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. I decided to get in the spirit of the holidays and get a little festive for this video. And of course, the video that I will be conducting today is coverage on the Iowa Hawkeyes 2024, I believe, Iowa football recruiting class. And your boy has had you guys covered every single year for the past couple of years, definitely the last 2 years. And I think a lot of Iowa fans, sorry guys, just got to get my pen here. I think Iowa fans should be very happy with the recruiting class that Iowa put together. Could it always be better? Absolutely. But there are a few things that stick out about this class that the Iowa Hawkeye coaching staff and fans should be happy about. By the way, guys, if you guys are not subscribed, smash that subscribe button. Your boy got the Christmas tree out, really getting dedicated with all of this. Just like I said, really wanted to get in the spirit, got the blazer on, the whole 9 yards, just for you guys, because I love you guys so much. Want to get back to you guys as best as I can. So subscribe. I would love for the channel to get to 2,000 subscribers by the start of the next football season. I was hopeful that we could get there by the end of the season, but the fact is there's only so many Iowa Hawkeye fans out there. That is why I have branched out to the Big Ten landscape. Not just because of that, but there's been recommendation to do so. The support has been great. And so, and I really enjoy doing this. So I am absolutely ecstatic to have you guys covered there. If you guys want to donate to the channel, you guys can. Just a little Christmas donation, but at the same time, I know a lot of you guys have families and various other obligations. So that is completely understandable. But if you guys want to support your boys' coffee habit and you guys really enjoy my content, I would definitely appreciate a donation to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this. So let me start here. And I will be pulling up 247 Sports and maybe On3's recruiting website to provide two different recruiting sources that have a pretty well-rounded composite ranking system in which we can look at and examine the Iowa Hawkeyes class. Now, the first thing is the Iowa Hawkeyes, and this is probably the biggest thing that sticks out with this class. The Iowa Hawkeyes absolutely, and I've already discussed this. This is well documented on my channel. The Iowa Hawkeyes absolutely dominated in-state recruiting in 2024. We will count up how many of the top 10 recruits from the state of Iowa that they have landed here in a moment when I get it pulled up. But they absolutely, positively dominated in-state recruiting. And it was pretty much shored up within like a year and a half ago. I mean, like even before the Iowa Hawkeyes massive official visit weekend, it was pretty much shored up as Iowa had landed commitments from three in-state linebackers that were all three of them were being heavily pursued by Iowa State and various other regional programs. They had the early commitment from legacy commit Cody Fox, whose brother Taylor Fox played for the Iowa Hawkeyes as a walk-on. And then really early on, and this actually happened after Iowa lost. And it's crazy that this is how far back it goes. And this really points out and illuminates how sped up recruiting has gotten across the country, especially in the Power Five conferences. But then Iowa landed a commitment from quarterback out of Florida, James Razor, I think it's Razor. And they lost that game, but they must have shown him exactly what he needed to see when he was on campus, and they received a commitment from James Razor. Now, just to talk about him really quickly, this was actually, in my opinion, an excellent get for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Number one, anytime you're able to get players from the state of Florida, Texas, California, some of the bigger states, Georgia, it's a nice win because there are tons of schools that recruit in those heavily populated states. But the second thing is that Iowa obviously has had a tumultuous, just downright terrible offensive output or production the last 2 years. And the fact that Iowa was able to continue to hold on to this kid's commitment is really promising. It was good. Okay. Because I thought for a while there that they were massively in jeopardy of losing his commitment. Now, ultimately, because recruiting has gotten so sped up, I think recruits know this. And because of that, they are not always as willing to decommit. Now, sure, if you're a high 4-star or a 5-star, it doesn't matter how filled up schools' classes are. If you're still interested in their school, they will find a spot for you. But classes get full. Case in point, Iowa was their first running back offer was to in-state running back Titus Crum. I think it's Cram. And a few other guys came down the pipeline, and they were ecstatic about the Iowa Hawkeye offer. This is well documented. Tyler Barnes spoke on this, that they told the guys that they had offered that they were only going to be taking 2 running backs in this class. One filled up in Xavier Williams, and then the second in kind of a late bloomer, Brevin Dahl, which we will get more into them in a moment. And that and there was no spot for Titus Cram any longer. And now he is at UNI. And this is a kid who had offers from Nebraska, Iowa, Iowa State, Minnesota, a lot of regional Big Ten Power 5 schools. Now, I'm not sure exactly what happened with him. I don't know if he got injured. Maybe there were some academic issues. But had he committed to Iowa then, Iowa would have fully honored that scholarship, because Iowa rarely offers non-committable offers like other schools do to recruits. They will only offer a kid unless they feel absolutely confident that they will be a good addition to the Iowa football program. They don't just hand out offers like other programs do. So the reason why I tell you guys that story is because at the same time, while Iowa's offense was struggling, a lot of classes were filled up when it came to James Razor. Now, late in the process, or a little bit later on in the process, schools like North Carolina, North Carolina State, a few other schools did come calling for James Razor's services. And then on top of that, you had the University of Iowa saying that they were no longer going to be employing Brian Ferentz at the conclusion of the football season. And it took some doing to hold on to his commitment. Now, as Tyler Barnes says, though, while it is important who the positional coach is for each of these recruits, at the end of the day, most of the recruits, if not all of them, commit to Kirk Ferentz and the University of Iowa program that he has put into place, instituted. So when a coach leaves, yes, it is cause for concern, and yes, it pushes a recruit to look into the matter a little bit further. They still have in the back of their mind a adoration and love for the program as a whole and a comfort level that sees them commit. So all of that was very, very interesting when it came to James Razor. I think it's great that Iowa was able to hold on to his commitment. The last thing that I want to say on him is, and I've been saying this for the last couple of years, although every now and again I get comments in the comment section that are contrary to this, and I'm here to tell you right now, they're false. Iowa has been, I don't know if it's intentional or it's not, because it's kind of hard to decipher the tea leaves when it comes to Kirk Ferentz and Tyler Barnes and their recruiting efforts and some of the things that they have said uh, with regards to media availability. But the last few cycles, Iowa has definitely brought in, whether it's intentional or not, whether it's a full-blown systemic approach that Iowa has decided to go after more athletic quarterbacks. I can't say, but regardless, that's what it's ended up being. You have Iowa getting Marco Lainez in last year's recruiting class, and he definitely has the ability to make plays with his feet. Would he be categorized as a full blown dual threat? Maybe not, but he does have athleticism. Okay, he's not a Nate Stanley. He's not a Spencer Petras. Iowa, of course, got their transfer from Michigan, and we all know that he definitely, Cade McNamara, he can definitely make plays with his feet. Deacon Hill is probably the least mobile quarterbacks in that's going to be in the room next year, but he still is more mobile than, in my opinion, than Spencer Petras and Nate Stanley. Now you have James Razor, who runs a 10.84 100-yard dash. This kid can fly. Okay. And when I pull up his, let's just go ahead and do it now. You guys will see in his scouting evaluation that he definitely is a dual threat quarterback. By the way, guys, Iowa, so it's kind of hard to articulate this. So the composite rank is an accumulation of all the recruiting services, and Iowa checks in at 34. Okay, there's a composite rank which apparently we can't even see anymore on 247 Sports. The overall rank is the composite rank plus the transfer rank, and then you get the overall rank. And of course, Iowa, which I will get to momentarily, Iowa's current strategy with regards to the transfer portal. But as far as the pure 247 Sports, just 247 Sports ranking of the Iowa Hawkeyes recruiting class, I believe they check in at number 23, as Iowa has 7 four-star players according to 247 Sports. They're number 26. Hopefully you guys can see that right here, 26 in the country, which is not bad at all. They have 5 composite 4-star guys, and I believe they have 7 4-star guys. There's Derek Weiskopf, Gavin Hoffman, Will Nolan, that's 3, Cam Buffington, 4, Cody Fox, 5, James Razor, 6, Joseph Anderson, 9. So I will get to this later. I think that this is Iowa's second best class in the last 10 years overall. Well, maybe not overall because the transfer portal's not done, but if you look at the high school, what Iowa was able to do this year in the recruiting ranks, which again I'll talk about this later on in the video, I would say that this is the second best recruiting class that Iowa has had in the last 10 years. The best would probably be, and this is not based on the production that we have seen on the field, but this is purely off of the recruiting rankings. Uh, Iowa in 2021, the Cooper DeJean, the Connor Colby, the David Davidkoff, of course, he got injured. He had a permanent injury. That would probably be the best class that we've seen in the last 10 years from the Iowa Hawkeyes. And the pure 247 sports grade was 17. Okay. So that was probably Iowa's best overall class, but in the last 10 years. But suffice it to say, I am very pleased with the Iowa Hawkeyes class this year out of the high school ranks. So let's look at James Razor here. He's 6'4", 200 pounds. They have him graded as a 90, and they consider him an athlete, 23rd ranked athlete. Indiana, Georgia Tech were in on him early on in the process. North Carolina came in late. Wake Forest came in late. Western Kentucky came in late. So, none of these schools were schools that I was overly concerned about. Now um, North Carolina was probably the biggest competition Iowa had, but they already had a quarterback commit, which is what I touched upon with regards to classes filling up, but had, maybe Wisconsin or some other ACC schools or even a Big 12 school come in, it definitely would have given Iowa some heat there. But the reason why you don't see more offers listed is because a lot of the Iowa recruits or commits simply shut down the process and say, nope, I'm good. I'm set with Iowa. We're all good. So this is from Andrew Ivins, a long dual threat quarterback with verified track speed, has operated primarily out of, and his comp is Matt Jones from Jacksonville, who plays for the Jaguars. Out of a single back spread attack that has some RPOs on the call sheet. As a junior, completed just over 66% of his passes, throwing for 1,900 yards with 16 tubs to go with 6 INTs. Verified track speed. And I read somewhere he ran a 10.81 40 yard, or excuse me, 100 meter sprint. So Iowa is definitely getting an athlete at the quarterback position. The other thing that sticks out from this class, I would say the two best position groups would be there's really three position groups that Iowa recruited really well in this class. The defensive line, the defensive line, in my opinion, is the single biggest catalyst that has revamped and taking this Iowa defense to a whole nother level that we hadn't seen on a consistent basis, not just for 1 year, but for a consistent period of time, has been the defensive line emergence. And how you get a good defensive line is, of course, you recruit better and you get more depth and you get guys that can play sooner and are developed and ready to contribute. The past 3-4 years, Iowa has had, 8 to 12, they can go 8 to 12 deep across the defensive line. Now, depending on the year, they will have, a stud, a freak of nature. Other times they just have a group of solid guys. Like, for example, this year, I wouldn't say that there was a specific defensive lineman that was that stood out per se, but they had a bunch of guys that were solid. Okay, last year they did have that guy in Lucas Van Ness. So the single biggest upgrade that to me has directly impacted the success of this Iowa Hawkeye defense has been the defensive line recruiting. So it'd be the defensive line, the linebacker group, which Iowa shored up early in the recruiting process from all in-state guys within a 50-mile radius, apparently, and the tight end group. I think that this is one of the best tight end hauls that Iowa has had in several years. I'm trying to think back to some other tight end classes that Iowa has had uh, on paper, at least from the recruiting ranks, that were as good as this. And it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, Addison Ostrenga is doing good. We'll see what he turns into. But Cale Vanderbush from that class has not contributed yet. Um, there was the Luke Lachey year, and I think he was accompanied by Josiah Meeman and maybe one other tight end get. But this is a really good tight end haul. Okay. Gavin Hoffman is a top 200 player. He's the number one player in the state of Kansas. He's the 14th ranked tight end in the country. He has a 40-inch vertical. Okay. Absolutely insane. He had offers from Missouri, Arkansas, Auburn, Arizona State. And ultimately, this came down to Iowa and some of the SEC schools, namely Missouri and Auburn. And he picked the Iowa Hawkeyes. He did officially visit Missouri and Arizona State to go along with Iowa. But ultimately, what stood out to Gavin about the Iowa Hawkeyes was the tight end tradition. I've long said this: if you're a tight end and you get offered by Iowa, why in God's name would you not go there? I mean, it is a tight end factory. I posted a couple weeks ago that 3 of the top, I think, 5 yards receiving yards at the tight end position are all Iowa Hawkeyes. In Sam Laporta, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, and of course Noah Fant. He was not listed in the top, I think it was top 5, but I'm sure he's having a decent year as well. So this was an excellent get for the Iowa Hawkeyes. They had major competition for him. The one thing that I would say about this class is it all around, it is really strong, but they don't have like a guy that is like a top 150 recruit. Okay. They don't have a Cooper DeJean. They don't have a Xavier Wanpa. They don't have, at one time a Caden Proctor, which last year they did, and then they didn't. They did all the way until they didn't in Caden Proctor. But honestly, I would rather it be this than to have one guy who is a guy and to have like the 40th best recruiting class in the country. So Gavin Hoffman has a verified 40-inch vertical leap. This is from Alan True, athletic tight end who has strong testing numbers and a high ceiling. Verified at 6'5" and was right around 210 pounds as a junior with room to grow. Explosive and has run shuttles in the 4.5s. Shows solid ball skills, catches it over his shoulder well, and has moments of being able to go up and over defender for contested passes. Does a bit of double clutching at times. Yada yada yada. So very, very athletic tight end for the Iowa Hawkeyes. The second highest rated guy. The second thing, or the last thing that I want to point out about this class is, a few years back during the Koof year, Iowa had a horrendous success rate out of their official visit weekend. And the last 2 years have been very successful. Iowa has remedied that fact. If we look here at the visits, unfortunately, Iowa was not able to land Leroy Roker. He got a late offer from Ohio State, and Iowa was still favored to get him, but it was just too much to turn down. I personally still think it's a mistake that he chose Ohio State, but that's his call, not mine. But if we look from the major official visit month and weekend of June, Iowa landed every single guy but one, Xavier Lucas, who decided to go to Wisconsin. But they still, they still got there at the defensive back position. They still got Rashad Godfrey, who, will start out at cornerback. He went to a big high school in Florida in their biggest division, their biggest classification. I think he's actually underrated by 247 Sports. Rivals sees him as a 5.7, so nearly a 4-star guy. They got Jalen Watson, who's an 88, high 3-star, who will start out at cornerback as well. Iowa did not get safeties in this class, but that's okay because the previous class, they got a ton of safeties. The previous two classes, Iowa has recruited the safety position really well. And I do think that Rashad Godfrey eventually can, we'll see what he ends up being better at, but he has some positional flexibility. They landed every single person. Michael Burt attended June 9th as opposed to June 23rd, but they landed every single guy but one guy, Xavier Lucas. Overall, they landed every single official visitor but two guys. And I've said this to you guys before, and I'll say it again, that Iowa, they have they have their official visitor weekend in late June. And there's pluses and minuses to that. When you have it that late, if you are able to get the official visit from the athlete, you're able to get the last shot at them. You're able to give the last pitch. And usually, if a guy has waited that long and has said no to the other programs, you have a really good shot of landing him. And if a guy ultimately cannot withstand the pressure to commit to a different school and ends up committing before the official visit that's scheduled to you, well, then it probably wasn't meant to be. Now, the negative obviously is that you're the last, being the last person to pitch to a recruit is the best and the worst because let's be honest, for kids, it's hard for them to say no. And so there's going to be a lot of recruits that Iowa simply just won't get the chance with because of how late their official visit weekend is. They will have committed to other schools. So, I'm okay with it. Obviously, I was questioning this 3 years ago during the COOF pandemic, but lately it's been very successful. I think overall it's more positive than negative to have a late to have the official visit weekend in the last week of the month. But again, just let it be known that there will be guys that Iowa simply does not get a chance with because they go last and the other guys end up committing elsewhere and are unable to hold off the pressures of those other schools. So this is on 3. I just want to show you guys a second site just to add a caveat here to a second look. On 3, their composite rank has Iowa 29th. Of course, 247 Sports has Iowa 34th. So they have them 5 spots lower. Um, they have Will Nolan graded as a 92. He's probably, in my opinion, the gem of the class. Um, the top three guys in Iowa's class would be Will Nolan, Derek Weisskopf, and Gavin Hoffman. Cody Fox is an all around 4-star, but he is not rated as highly as some of these, like for example, you look at Gavin Hoffman and he has a 91 by 247 Sports. Derek Weisskopf has a 91 by On3 and 247 Sports. Will Nolan has a 92 and a 91. Cody Fox is just a 4-star, which is still good. He does have an 82 by ESPN, which is pretty high. Okay, never mind, guys. Cody Fox is still a highly rated guy. Obviously, the top four guys are the top four guys that you guys see right here: Will Nolan, Derek Weisskopf, Gavin Hoffman, Cody Fox. Cam Buffington is highly rated as well. Joseph Anderson is pretty highly rated at this point as well too. He's considered a 4-star by both On3 and 247 Sports. On3 is higher on Drew Campbell's brother than, or excuse me, on Jack Campbell's brother than 247 Sports is. They have him as a 91 and a top 250 player in the country. The last thing I want to point out here about the class overall is the running back class. I think the running back and the wide receiver class. I love the combination that Iowa got in Brevin Dull, a speedster that a lot of schools were recruiting him as a wide receiver or a cornerback because of how athletic he is. He has verified track speed. And then Xavier Williams, who is a more bruising thumper running back that all reports have said that he looks like a Big Ten running back. Big legs. So I think the kind of sugar and spice, yin and yang that Iowa got for their two spots could not have worked out better. At the wide receiver position, honestly, guys, I keep saying this, and I would be remiss if I did not point it out. For those of you who keep on saying that Iowa does not recruit the wide receiver position good, you are mistaken. Okay, they recruit it just fine. And honestly, they recruit it better than they should. If you look at the stats that their offense has, it's a wonder that they get the guys that they do. Okay. KJ Parker out of Illinois is an 87 by On3 and an 88 by 247 Sports. Okay. That's a high 3-star recruit, according to those services. Okay. KJ Parker right here. Those are pretty good rankings. They landed Reese Vanderzee, who Iowa State and some of the other Nebraska, some of the other regional schools were heavily in on him. Honestly, had he gone to a bigger high school in the state of Iowa, I guarantee he would have been higher. He would have been rated higher, and he would have had even more offers than he did. 6'5", 190 pounds. He primarily played quarterback for Central Lyon, but he is graded 87 and 87. Okay, guys, you go back to like 10, 11 years ago, Iowa was struggling to land 2-star and not rated wide receivers. Okay. Cavante Martin Manley was a 2-star receiver. Okay. That was commonplace, was Iowa landing these complete project 2-star wide receivers, 10, 11 years ago. Now they consistently land wide receivers who have regional Power 5 offers and are high 3-star guys. I mean, look at this: Nebraska, Iowa State, Kansas State. Oh, it doesn't look like Kansas State ended up offering. So not bad. So I don't want, I'm tired of hearing people say that Iowa does not recruit the wide receiver position well. That is just false. Okay. Um, just to wrap this up, guys, I could talk about this all day long. Iowa's class score was 88.29. The average, let's see here, the average rating of their class, the average recruit rating of their class was an 87.54, which is not bad. Okay. Guys, they, just to put this into context here, and, recruiting is not the end all be all, but it definitely means something. They have a better class, according to On3, than Washington does, who is in the college football playoff. Okay. So, and if you look at this right here, this is the big number. Iowa landed 6 4-star players. Okay. The only other time that was beat, and that's composite. Okay. That's composite. The only other time that was beat was in 2021, where Iowa landed 8, I believe. But if we look at On3, so 247 Sports, Iowa has 7 4-star players, pure 4-star guys. On3, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 5 4-star guys, according to On3 recruiting. This ranking is not accurate for Davon Kennedy. He's actually an 88 by 247 Sports. They're kind of late to the party. And lastly, Iowa did get a punter for the class. He will be the immediate starter for the Iowa Hawkeyes. He has immense shoes to fill. Iowa did have the number 1 punter in the United States in Drew Miller right up the road at Minneapolis. But at the time, Iowa did not know if they were going to need a punter or not. And punter and kicker is one of those tricky positions where if you don't have to use a scholarship on that position, you don't. And especially the punter position, you basically can only give an offer when you know for sure that you're going to have a spot open. But at the time, Tory Taylor still had a year of eligibility left and had not confirmed that he was or was not coming back next year. So, that's why they missed out on him. He couldn't pass up the Georgia Bulldog opportunity. And to tell you the truth, I'd probably choose Georgia too. Obviously, if I was an Iowa Hawkeye fan, I'd still strongly consider Iowa, but Georgia is an excellent school, and it's hard to pass up a full ride scholarship when the other school does not have a current full ride scholarship for you. All right, guys, let's wrap this up here. This has already gone longer than I wanted it to. The last couple, so this is a really good recruiting class. I think that you guys should be happy with the recruiting efforts that Iowa put forth. The two things there's 3 things that have played the biggest factor in the recent recruiting success of Iowa. Number 1, and this cannot be emphasized enough, is the emergence and resurgence of in-state talent in the state of Iowa. And I believe that largely boils down to the longevity of Kirk Ferentz and the sheer amount of athletes that he has coached that have put roots down in the state of Iowa. And now they are putting their knowledge, their professional knowledge, down to the amateur ranks vis-a-vis coaching and strength and conditioning programs. Obviously, I don't live in the state of Iowa, so I can't say for sure, but that's usually how it works. The state of Iowa, the last couple of years, the last 4 or 5 years, matter of fact, I think that's important to show, actually. So back in the day, Iowa, if let's just say you went back 10 years ago, the state of Iowa was lucky to have 5 Power 5 scholarship players each recruiting class. Now, on average, they have 10 minimum. uh 2024 they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. They had 17 full ride scholarship players go to Power 5 schools. And they could have had 18. Titus Cram had Power 5 offers. So that's 2024. I'll get back to Grant Bricks here in a second because people are going to ask me why Iowa did not land him, uh, and it's not what you think. So, 2023, Iowa had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They had about 16, 17. I don't know if Miles Thompson was a full ride guy, but they for sure had 15. Okay. So it's the emergence of in-state talent. The second thing is NIL and the Swarm Collective. Iowa is one of the best schools when it comes to their NIL collective, and they have done a great job with it. Okay, that is number two, and number three is the on-field success that Iowa has had the last 4 years. Okay, so just really quickly, I did want to touch upon Grant Bricks. Iowa was in on Grant Bricks. He was actually not from the state of Iowa. He was not born in the state of Iowa, so he didn't have the same connection with the University of Iowa that others did, but he did. He was fully aware of the offensive line tradition that the University of Iowa had, but at the end of the day, Iowa did not want to be caught with their pants down like they were last year with Caden Proctor, when Caden Proctor at the last moment decided to go to Alabama. Now, some people would say that it was worth it, that you have to go all in for a recruit like Caden Proctor, and I would agree. But Iowa was okay with landing the two offensive tackles that they did land. They had Cody Fox, an offensive guard. And if you look at Iowa's recruiting class at the offensive line position, again, one of the better position groups in their recruiting class. You know, initially I said tight end and linebacker, but the other and defensive line, but the other one is offensive line. I mean, it's a really good recruiting class at the offensive line position. You have Cody Fox, who's likely going to be a guard. He is a 4-star consensus player. You have Josh Jankowski, who's going to be coming in as a center, and he is a consensus high 3-star player out of Lincoln Way East. You have Will Nolan, who is a consensus 4-star guy who is as highly rated as Grant Bricks is. Okay. And then you have Brady McCaslin, who is a high 3-star, 89, 89. He's as close to being a 4-star guy as you can get. He was an excellent get for the Iowa Hawkeyes, had tons of regional offers, and Iowa had to do a lot to secure his commitment. So, you know, they were fine with the guys they had, and I actually think they made the right choice. And ultimately, they thought as highly of those guys as they did about Grant Bricks, which is why they went in on them harder, the same, if not harder, as they did for Grant Bricks. And it was reported, because I see a lot of Nebraska fans saying, and look, we landed the number one player in the state of Nebraska. Context matters, guys. And you know what? In fairness to the Nebraska fans, I did it too a few years back when Keegan Johnson and some other in-state Nebraska guys picked the Iowa Hawkeyes, and Nebraska did abysmally in in-state recruiting. But the bottom line is there was a report that Grant Bricks responded to when he was updating his recruitment, and he said that Iowa just stopped reaching out to him. They weren't sure why, but they just stopped recruiting him. Plain and simple. It wasn't vice versa. It wasn't Grant Bricks who said he wasn't interested in Iowa. I think Iowa knew that it was going to be hard to land him. That they didn't have the in-state connection that they do with other in-state guys. You know, he was not born in the state of Iowa. He had a lot of heavy suitors: Alabama, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and they were ultimately fine with the other. And the other guys are highly recruited as well and highly rated. So that is the answer to that. So my final comments on all of this. Let me talk about the transfer portal really quickly. This this is really way longer than I was anticipating. Currently, you know, some of you guys may have questions about the Iowa Hawkeyes with regards to the transfer portal. And the coaching staff for Iowa has made it clear that they are recruiting guys that are currently on their roster that have eligibility to return, but could also leave to the NFL. They are recruiting them first and foremost and turning their attention to them first before turning to the transfer portal. And I think that that's a very wise decision, because at the end of the day, if you look at guys like Nick Jackson, Jay Higgins, Luke Lachey, you know, Iowa already landed or got Nick DeYoung to come back for his 6th year of eligibility. Uh, um, let's see, Sebastian Castro. I mean, you know, all these guys, okay, ultimately, are there really anybody in the transfer? Is there really anybody in the transfer portal that would be better than them? No, honestly, I mean, Iowa would be lucky to land anybody as good, definitely not better than it would be very difficult. Okay. All of those guys, if they went in the transfer portal, would have numerous schools knocking down their door trying to get their commitment. So I think it's a wise decision. They're those guys. If you look at it from the perspective of those guys being free agents just as much as the guys who are already in the transfer portal that have not been on the Iowa Hawkeyes roster, and you look at it from that standpoint, those guys are just as important to get their commitment just for one more year. Cooper DeJean, as anybody in the transfer portal. Okay, those guys are proven contributors at the Big Ten level. Then after that, Iowa will play it by ear, and they have long said this, that at this point they will use the transfer portal to bolster and add depth to their roster if needed. And that's where it's at with the transfer portal. Last year, they did need to go to the transfer portal. You know, they lost Sam Laporta. They needed to get some depth at the tight end position. Eric All was available. They landed the commitment from Cade McNamara. It made sense to contact Eric All, and he was a proven contributor at the Big Ten level, at a high level. You know, obviously Iowa needed to get into the transfer portal and find a quarterback. Obviously, Iowa needed to get into the transfer portal and find a wide receiver. Okay. That is not necessarily the case this year. Without taking into account the guys that Iowa has that are considering the NFL or returning to Iowa. Okay. Regardless of that, okay, let's just assume all of those guys come back to Iowa, including Cooper DeJean. The positions that I think Iowa could take a look at, even though they are completely full right now as far as scholarships go, okay, and they really have not been hit that hard with regards to the transfer portal and attrition, I would consider looking for another big-bodied wide receiver in the transfer portal. Although I do think Iowa has some guys coming up the ranks that are, freshmen and redshirt freshmen that they already do have depth, quite frankly. So, it would really be tricky if the right guy was there. I would definitely consider one big-bodied wide receiver because the Iowa is pretty much full when it comes to slot and slot wide receivers with Caleb Brown. Yes, they did lose Deontay Vines. What are you going to do? But I think overall, the wide receiver room at Iowa is pretty healthy, but they could use a contributor at the X position. So what I'm saying is if there was a guy who was an X receiver that was a proven contributor that Iowa felt very strongly about him coming to Iowa and being an immediate impact guy, that I would consider, but anything short of that, I would just roll with who was on the roster. The other position that I would consider would be probably cornerback. I do think Iowa again has pretty good depth there, and they have some young guys, and they have some guys that are currently contributors that are talented. But you can always use one more guy. As we saw this last year with Jamari Harris and what happened with him, and then Deshaun Lee got hurt. Iowa really did have some attrition at the cornerback position. So that would be the other position that I would consider. But again, now the cornerback position I think is a little bit different. I would look for a guy. I would not look for a guy that would be a guaranteed contributor. I would more look for a guy that I could bring on that would not ruffle any feathers in the room, but could add to the depth of the current roster. Now, again, all of this is going to depend on what guys decide to do, go to the NFL, not go to the NFL. But I think it's a wise decision for Iowa to currently put all of their efforts into getting guys to return to Iowa. Guys that were contributors, and if they did leave, they would be leaving for the NFL. All right, guys, that is pretty much it for me. I think this is an excellent class for the Iowa Hawkeyes. We'll see what happens with the transfer portal, but I think Iowa did a great job. It was largely drama-free. The defensive line class is strong. The offensive line class is strong. The tight end class is strong. And the linebacker class is strong. I think that this will end up being one of Iowa's most productive recruiting classes. I really mean that. I think it's all around really strong. And I can't wait to see what these guys do on the field. All right, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. I really appreciate the support. The channel continues to grow. If you guys want to donate to the channel, I would really appreciate that. I know you guys are accountable to your families and all of that as well. That is completely understandable. But at the very least, like I said, just comment, show your support vis-a-vis that way. But if you guys would like to support your boy's coffee habit, I'd always appreciate it. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy, Willow. In facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye.